Rowland introduces a new fly pattern on Monday, January the 4th, 2024. The pattern was the Lowe's Gray Nymph. A dubbing tool was demonstrated, but because of the camera's proximity to the vise, it wasn't possible to watch the dubbing tool being prepared for the process that followed. I noticed that some of you were having difficulty using the dubbing tool. So preceding Gary's tutorial on this pattern, I have embedded a short YouTube video. The link to this video as well as 3 other dubbing tool usage videos are listed below in the comments section of this webpage. Please refer to these videos first if you don't know how to use a dubbing tool. Otherwise, here is the intro YouTube video on dubbing, followed by Gary's instructional video on the Lowe's Gray Nymph. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to this channel and click on the thumbs up button.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Fly Tying Tips with the Northern Angler. Today we're going to talk about dubbing loops. Now this is the first of a series of videos where we'll be putting out that talk about what dubbing loops are, how to manipulate them, how to use them with different materials, and this is going to be a real basic video. The other 2 that will follow it will step up in difficulty and give you something to work on through the winter and improve your fly tying. So let's talk about first, what is a dubbing loop? A dubbing loop is what it sounds like, except it's created with thread. So it's a loop of thread that drops below your hook shank here that you can actually put materials into and apply them to your hook separate from your thread and bobbin. Why would we want a dubbing loop? You know, you can put on dubbing very simply just by applying it to your thread. Well, a dubbing loop allows you to put a very large amount of material in at a very quick pace, especially if you're using a rotary vise like I am today. The other thing is, a lot of great tires have manipulated loops to put other things in, like bunny and marabou and flashabou, that allows you to put really higher volume materials in with very low thread wraps and very low thread buildup. So it's a really useful technique to have in your arsenal. Do you want to use it for everything? No, I think some tires overuse the technique, in fact. But hey, I can't say anything. It's a lot of fun. So let's talk about how to form a dubbing loop. Today I'm just using a blank hook, which you should as well, because it makes practice really easy. You know, if you wait till you're in the middle of a fly, you're gonna hate learning this, because it's on the fly and it's goofy. So we're just gonna start our thread up at the eye and work to the midway point. I'm using Vivus 140 power thread today. That's what that looks like, just so you can get a look. Okay, so midpoint of the hook. Great, that's insecure. Now to form a dubbing loop, you don't need a special tool, just your finger. To manipulate it, you might want a special tool. So first of all, give yourself some slack, pull your bobbin down towards your table, and place your finger at the midway point. And then under tension, you're going to bring your bobbin back up, and you're going to take wraps just like you're starting your thread. Now with tension here, I'm going to wrap the bobbin around the dubbing loop. I usually just do 2 times and bring it back up. Give yourself a few more wraps, and that has closed the loop at the bottom. If you have 2 points that are very far apart, this is not going to work. You will really hate this technique. Okay, I'm going to advance my thread up to the eye. I'm going to let go of that. It's not going to go anywhere. I'm just going to tie my thread off because we are going to use the rotary function. Now, I mentioned tool. This is the Stonefo Roto Dubbing Tool. It's my favorite. There's some other really useful tools out there. Loon makes an excellent one. there's some real basic ones that are just look like a shepherd's hook as well that work really well. If you want to be, just want to try this out, a paper clip on the end of a pen worked for me for a little bit. So if you're using a tool like this, you want to insert the hooks, bring it down. Now what's great about these flexible hooks is I can close the loop once I'm done inserting material. And that's just going to stay there. Today I'm just going to use some ice dub and brown. Grab a pile of this. And I like to align the material as best I can, so instead of a wide glob, I get a fairly narrow glob. I'll hold on to one side of the thread and fold this material in. Now once it's in here, the weight of this tool is going to keep the loop fairly closed, which is really, really helpful because I want to spread this material out so it runs the entire length of the loop. Okay, we got most of it in there. Time to spin. You can overspin this, so you can overdo it big time. At this point, some folks will like to use a Velcro tool and pick out their dubbing loops. With the ice dub, we're going to get into this a little bit more in the second video. I don't think you need to comb it at this point. I think you run the risk of pulling your thread or really thinning it out before applying to the hook. So from here, you got to keep tension, and I'm just going to use the rotary function to start wrapping this up. Now imagine this is the body of a stonefly or a streamer if you're using a different flash maybe. I want to hold this up. This is where my thread attaches to the tool. That's my tie-off point. Because I ran the material through the entire loop, I'm going to have to tie off on a little bit of material. So you're going to need some thread tension. There's 3 there and 3 in front. Reach in with your scissors. I'm going to tie that off really well. Just do a little whip finish. Trim your thread, and now I'm going to come in with my Velcro tool, and you can pick this dubbing out a lot without exposing the thread, which is really nice, and build kind of a high volume body. Whether you're making nymphs, whether making big dry flies or streamers, this is the basis of a dubbing loop. See, not tons of buildup. I didn't have to twist dubbing onto the thread for 10 minutes straight for one fly. It's pretty convenient. So that's the basic dubbing loop. Check out our upcoming video, Dubbing Loops 102, where I'll cover some of the different types of dubbing you can use and how it behaves in a dubbing loop and how to apply it. I hope this helped. If you have not subscribed, please do so. There's a link in the upper corner. And happy tying. Thanks for tuning in.
This pattern is a Lowe's Gray Nymph. It's a pretty little bug. I think it looks very buggy. It's not too difficult to tie. It only involves about 2 or 3 materials. We've got some light hairs mask dubbing. We've got some partridge feather for the tail and the beard. Gold wire, some lead, some black thread. 6/0 probably works better on this one because we're going to build up the body a little bit before we apply dubbing. The thing that I wanted to use this pattern for primarily is it introduce you to a new technique. This involves using a dubbing whirl. These come in all kinds of sizes and shapes. Most of them that I see, the twirling shank is 3 or 4 times longer than that. I do not like those because if you are twirling, when you make a loop and you start twirling, your twirler is going to be down pretty low and you start getting in the way of your fly tying base. So I have ordered these ever since I've been doing this course because they are so short, and I think that's a plus for this particular tool. So I'm going to get this out of my vise. I'll tie one, and those of you that haven't tied before, you might want to just watch a little bit. This can be tied on a 12 or smaller. I opted for a size 10 because it'll give you a little bit more practice using that dubbing twirl. You'll use a little bit more material that way. In your pattern book, there are a couple things that I vary a little bit. They have you lay a thread base and tie in stuff, the tail in, and then put the lead on. I have not had great luck keeping the lead in the position I want it if I've got it over thread. So I put the lead on first because I can put it where I want it and not have to worry about it twirling around on me. So, like normal, I don't know if this is going to work or not. Nope, I brought that for nothing. I'm going to put my lead on, and I want it long enough that I've got a pretty good weight on it. I'm going to tie in my tag end a little bit, and then I'm looking at, I've got maybe 10, 11 wraps on. If you use a smaller hook, you wouldn't put that many wraps on. I'm going to pull that on, and I'm going to try and tighten that up to my hook shank a little bit by holding the tail end of the lead and twirling it on the front. That tightens up the wraps. And then I'm going to get my bobbin out. This light is terrible, or my eyes are getting worser and worser. And I put my thread in about where the bend is. I'm going to bring it forward. Once I get a wrap in that lead, it's not going to move on me. I'm going to kind of lay a little bit of a thread base. I'm going to go back over my lead. I'm going to go back to where I started. I'm going to trim my tag end off. And this is another practice session with wrapping thread. I want to build up the thread wrap so that it matches the height of the lead. We've done that on another pattern. So I'm just going to start wrapping the middle part. Cover up that lead a little bit. If you build this up now, it helps when we're applying the dubbing. I'm going to leave my thread at the rear of my wrappings, and the next step is to grab a partridge tail. If you grab one that's a little bit longer, it will help. But I'm going to pull off a small wad. Maybe on this size of hook, I can use a little bit more for the tail. So I've pulled them off. I'm going to grab them, and then I'm going to cut it off of the main stalk. And I'm going to save that because that one little feather will do several of these. And I'm going to lay these on top, and I don't want them extending back a long distance. So that looks about right. I'm going to try and put a loose loop over it so I can get it attached and make sure I've got it on top of the hook. And the goal is to get the tails so that they droop down a little bit. And when I've got that secured, I'm going to come back here and tie those in and trim off my surplus. I got a pair of my, junk scissors. I'm going to use to cut that thread instead of my good scissors. I'm going to take this gold wire. I'm going to lay it on loose wraps to get it grabbed good. And then I'm going to bring it back down to where I've got the tail tied on. Now is where we start using the dubbing loop, okay? I don't know if I can back this off enough that you can see what I'm doing better, or that's as far back as I can get it. I'm going to take my bobbin and I'm going to pull out 4 or 5 inches. I'm going to make a loop with my bobbin. I'm going to bring it back up to the top, and I'm going to tie that off so it's going to stay in place.
The dubbing tool is now going to come into play. So if you have never used a dubbing tool, I hope you paid close attention to the video that preceded this tying demonstration. Now, here is Gary with the dubbing portion of this pattern.
I'm going to grab my dubbing loop, and this is the problem. I don't think you can see this. My dubbing loop keeps the 2 threads apart. I've got these magnifying glasses on. It's just making things worse. So I don't know if you can see this, but my thread is spread by the dubbing loop, okay? And I've got mine probably longer than I really need it. I'm going to see if I can do this without those glasses. It distorts everything. Okay. Now, if you brought your dubbing wax, now's the time to put a little bit of dubbing wax on your thread. So I'm just going to put some down. I got my loop a little bit bigger than I needed. It may cause me a problem. But I've got my wax now on the loop, and I've got it separated. So now I'm going to take my dubbing, and I'm going to take little bits out. For a size 10 hook, you can get by using a little bit more dubbing because there's quite a bit more surface area to cover. But I'm going to start at the bottom, which you can't see. I'll try to get it to where you can see. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to try and get it in between the 2 loops. And I'm just going to fill up all that space with my dubbing. I'm just going up the hook shank, or the dubbing loop, trying to get up toward the hook shank.
You said he can't see what you're doing on the bottom. If you can zoom back out to get more of the picture.
I'm out as far as I can go.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're very close up.
But you see, I'm just putting that dubbing, try to get it in between the 2 loops, and I'm going up until I can get clear up to the top. And don't get too much, but you need to get as much up toward that loop as you can. Now I'm going to try and get rid of that thread. Oh, I screwed up. My loop came off. Hang on. Dadgummit. Okay. I've got my dubbing in between, and now I'm going to take that twirler at the bottom of the dubbing loop, and I'm going to spin it. I should have done this different. If I do it next time I'll show it. But I'm going to spin that dubbing loop. And get this out of the way. And you can see, after spinning that dubbing loop, I've got that dubbing all twisted in between. But I've got got too much thread up here, so I'm going to try and get rid of that thread to where I need to start my dubbing. Okay, and now I'm going to be wrapping the body with that dubbing. That saves a lot of twisting on a single strand, and I'm going to build that body pretty thick with this dubbing, because when we wrap the gold wire, it really compresses the dubbing. So hang on. I've got a way to recover this, maybe. Okay. So I'm going to continue wrapping that dubbing up, and I want a little thicker in the middle than at the front end. And although I've got it pretty close up to the head now. I'm going to have to tie that off. A couple of wraps on both sides. And then I'm going to snip my dubbing loop off. And I've got more dubbing than I really need up there, so I'm going to try and tweeze some of that stuff out now. I'm going to be forming a head. I'm going to tie that off again so I can get my gold wire. Now I'm going to grab my gold wire, and I'm going to start wrapping that forward and trying to get the wraps pretty close together, the same distance apart. You see how it's smushing that dubbing?
Smushing?
Yeah, that's a new word.
I was going to say.
It's in the Rowland lexicon. I'm going to try and tie that off, get rid of my wire, and at this point I'm going to try and trim a little bit of that dubbing that I crowded the eye with. Try to get rid of a little bit of that without cutting my wire. rid of a little bit of that stuff, maybe. Now, at this point, you need to, if you don't have a rotary vise, you need to take the fly out and turn it upside down. And the next step is to apply the beard to that fly. So I'm going to grab some more the little barbs off that partridge feather. Trim them off from the main shaft. I'm going to grab them, and these I want to place like so. They should come about to the hook point. So to get them started, if you can get just one little easy loop, and then you could adjust that with this one loop. That's maybe a little too much, so I'm going to try and pull them back just a skosh. I cannot see in here. And I'm going to trim You want them to hang back as a bundle. And these are not cooperating. Well, there we go.
Just a little light, but it's not strong.
Yeah. And then I'm going to trim off my extra. Boy, this is I knew this had happened because I can't see out here. Okay, so I've got my beard going. I'm going to give it another wrap or two, and then I'm going to build up my head. Doesn't look too bad. My head is really sucky. Put a couple of half hitches on that, get my dubbing or my whip finish tool out and finish that off. Trim my thread. And if you want to put a little head cement on the fly, you can. This is such an ugly one, I'm not even going to mess with it.
Bugs are not pretty.
But I think you can see it's a very buggy looking fly.
They're supposed to be, Gary.
The piece hanging down, is that what you call a beard?
Yes. This is the beard. This is the tail. And other than that, my eye is kind of ugly. That's a pretty decent representation of a Lowe's gray nymph.